What if I told you that the very thing you're trying to avoid, pain, is the only thing that can truly set you free? Not metaphorically, not someday, but now, today. Because in the crucible of your suffering lies the blueprint for your power. And until you face it, you'll never know who you could have been. We live in a world obsessed with comfort, a culture that whispers endlessly, take it easy, numb the ache, escape the weight. But here's the truth: real, enduring, transformative growth does not come from ease. It doesn't arise out of pleasure or leisure or indulgence. It comes from hardship, from struggle, from willingly walking straight into the fire and choosing to carry what is heavy. Pain is not a punishment. It's a signal. It's the call to adventure in the story of your life. The invitation to become something more than what you are. Because every time you endure, every time you choose to stand up instead of give in, you build strength. Not just physical strength, but psychological resilience, moral courage, spiritual depth. You build the kind of strength that lasts. And that's why pain today is not just suffering, it's investment. It's not just a burden, it's preparation. You are trading your temporary comfort for lasting power. You are becoming someone capable, someone formidable, someone who doesn't just survive chaos, but can bring order to it. So, no, you shouldn't run from pain. You should listen to it, face it, harness it, because that pain, that very thing you fear most, it might just be the door to the strongest, most honest version of yourself. And that version of you is powerful. Let us dive in. Pain is a fundamental part of the human experience. And though we may wish to escape it, it is often the very thing that initiates the process of transformation. When we feel pain, emotional, physical, spiritual, it's a signal, an alarm that something is not aligned. It's the body and mind's way of drawing attention to a deficiency, an imbalance, or a failure to confront reality as it is. And so, pain is not the problem. Pain is the invitation to solve the problem. If we view life through the lens of comfort and ease, we miss the point. Comfort doesn't test you. It doesn't call you to change. But pain does. It demands something from you. It insists that you grow. It breaks down old assumptions, outdated narratives, and self-deceptions. It forces you to look in the mirror and ask, am I who I pretend to be, or is there a stronger version of me waiting to emerge? True transformation is not some light, euphoric journey. It's often forged in the fire of suffering. The most meaningful breakthroughs in life, whether in relationships, careers, personal development, or spiritual awakening, are usually preceded by moments of immense discomfort. So, rather than seeing pain as an obstacle, you must begin to understand it as a tool, as a catalyst, as the very thing that makes growth not just possible, but inevitable if you choose to face it. This is why pain today, when embraced and understood, becomes the raw material from which you build the power to become someone capable of enduring tomorrow's challenges. Choosing to suffer voluntarily is one of the most profound and ancient ideas across philosophy and psychology alike. It's not about masochism. It's about willingly engaging in struggle with open eyes and an open heart for the sake of who you might become. When you make this choice, you start to build resilience, not the kind of hollow toughness that pretends not to care, but the deep, enduring strength that comes from carrying weight. Resilience isn't about pretending that things don't hurt. It's about learning to withstand the hurt, to push through, to integrate the experience and become more competent on the other side. Discipline, for example, is a form of voluntary suffering. Nobody wants to get up at 5 a.m., go to the gym, say no to distractions, study when it's boring, or keep going when every fiber of your being is begging for rest. But those who choose that struggle voluntarily become the very people who others turn to when chaos erupts, because they've trained themselves to face it. When you say yes to challenge now, you are preparing for the unknown. You're preparing to be someone who doesn't collapse under pressure, who doesn't flee from responsibility, but who can hold the line when it matters most. Voluntary struggle becomes a rehearsal for life's inevitable involuntary suffering. So, by engaging it now, on your terms, you make yourself stronger, more stable, more prepared to face what the world throws at you tomorrow. You become the kind of person who can shoulder the burden, not because you were spared pain, but because you chose it before it chose you. There is a price to be paid for every path in life, and avoidance is not free. In fact, avoidance is perhaps the most expensive choice of all, though its cost is hidden in the moment. When you avoid pain, discomfort, and responsibility, you are not escaping consequence. You are merely postponing it and allowing it to grow. Avoidance breeds weakness because it prevents the necessary exposure to challenge that builds character. Think of a muscle that is never exercised. It atrophies. It becomes fragile, prone to injury. The same is true for the soul, for the psyche, for the self. When you avoid difficult conversations, you become socially anxious. When you avoid setting boundaries, you become resentful. When you avoid work, your confidence erodes. Avoidance feels good today, but it robs you of capability tomorrow. And what's worse, the longer you avoid something, the more intimidating it becomes. The pain grows in the shadows. It becomes a monster that you feed with your inaction. Eventually, what could have been dealt with through courage and effort becomes a crisis, one that consumes you. Avoidance is not peace. It is the slow decay of potential. It's spiritual entropy. And while the immediate pain of confrontation is real, it is temporary. The pain of avoidance, on the other hand, becomes chronic. It lingers, it metastasizes, and it diminishes who you are. So you must make a decision to suffer now in pursuit of strength, or suffer later from the consequences of your own inaction. There is no life without pain, but there is a life with purpose. If you choose to engage with pain rather than run from it, every human being is born into chaos. The world is overwhelming, unpredictable, and frequently unfair. Yet, we also have the remarkable capacity to bring order to that chaos, to create structure, routine, morality, and meaning out of what initially appears senseless. This ability is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And the very act of confronting chaos, of facing the unknown, is painful. It requires courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to fail. But this confrontation is what gives life meaning. When you step into the chaos, when you wrestle with the dragons of uncertainty, anxiety, and pain, you are not being punished. You are being invited into your destiny. You're becoming the architect of your own reality. The pain you experience in this process is not destructive. It is formative. It shapes you into someone who can lead, build, and stabilize not just your own life, but the lives of others. You take the raw material of chaos, fear, failure, loss, and you organize it into something noble, a life of purpose, discipline, and contribution. The alternative is to let chaos reign, to live in disarray, confusion, and bitterness. But that is not a life, it is a slow death. So yes, stepping into the unknown is painful, but it is also the only way to emerge with something valuable: wisdom, clarity, and strength. Out of chaos, we draw order, and that act transforms pain into power. We are not here to seek comfort. We are here to seek meaning. Comfort has its place. It allows rest, recovery, and pleasure. But when it becomes the dominant goal, it becomes a trap. The pursuit of comfort, when divorced from responsibility, leads to apathy, addiction, and despair. It promises happiness but delivers emptiness. Responsibility, on the other hand, asks much of you. It demands that you carry a load, that you sacrifice, that you grow. And in doing so, it gives your life substance. You wake up with a reason. You endure suffering with a purpose. You build something real when you take on responsibility, whether for your family, your work, your health, or your community. You are not just carrying a burden. You are becoming someone others can rely on, someone who can weather the storm. This transformation is painful. It requires letting go of childish notions of ease and indulgence. It requires discipline and sacrifice, but what you gain in return is strength, integrity, and dignity. Comfort without responsibility is the fast track to mediocrity. But responsibility, even with its pain, is the path to power, because the strongest version of you is not found in ease. It is found in the struggle to do what is right, even when it is hard. The struggle is not separate from strength. It is the source of it. You cannot become strong without encountering resistance. You cannot build endurance without pain. The very qualities you admire in others, resilience, patience, courage, wisdom, are the result of hardship. They are not inherited. They are earned through failure, through frustration, through pain. When you struggle, when you face difficulty head on, your character is tempered like steel in fire. You learn what you're capable of. You stretch beyond what you thought were your limits. And in that process, you grow. Struggle teaches you that you can endure, that you can adapt, that you can overcome. It redefines what is possible for you. And every time you push through, you are building a reserve of strength that can be called upon when life becomes even harder, which it inevitably will. You don't get strong by reading about it. You get strong by living through it. And when you stop seeing struggle as a sign of failure and start seeing it as the forge of greatness, everything changes. Struggle becomes sacred, because in it, you are not just surviving, you are transforming, becoming more than you were. That is why pain today, when embraced through struggle, becomes strength tomorrow. Suffering, though feared and avoided by many, is the very mechanism by which potential is revealed. You don't know how much you're capable of until you're pressed beyond comfort, until life pushes you to the edge. And then you realize the edge is not where you stop. It's where you begin to uncover who you could become. Most people live far beneath their potential, not because they're incapable, but because they've never had to confront the full weight of adversity. They've never been tested. They've never had to reach deeper, fight harder, or hold themselves accountable when everything seemed to collapse. But when suffering enters your life, and it will, it acts as a mirror. It strips away pretense and illusion and forces you to confront your limits. And once you're face to face with those limits, you're faced with a choice: retreat or expand. Most retreat. They numb themselves, hide, deny, or blame. But the few The very few choose to rise. They see suffering as a crucible. They ask, "What is this pain trying to teach me?" And in that question lies the first spark of transformation. You begin to uncover qualities you didn't know were there: courage, patience, tenacity, creativity, compassion. These are not traits that emerge when life is easy. They are forged in the dark, in the struggle, when you are forced to either evolve or collapse. And once you've seen that version of yourself, the one who endured, who overcame, you can never go back. Because you realize the suffering wasn't just pain. It was the unveiling of your potential. You became more, not in spite of it, but because of it. There's a reason every great myth, every hero's journey is built upon pain. Whether it's ancient legends, religious texts, or modern stories of triumph, the common thread is always the same: the hero must suffer. The hero must descend. The hero must face something dark and terrifying within or without and emerge transformed. Why? Because transformation without sacrifice is a lie. Power without pain is fantasy. These stories are not entertainment. They are maps of human psychology. They speak to a deeper truth, that in order to become who you are meant to be, you must be willing to endure trials. This isn't symbolic. It's literal. You have to fail. You have to lose things. You have to break down in order to rebuild. Think of the phoenix, burning before it can rise. The pain is not the end of the story. It is the passage. And if you try to avoid it, to skip the suffering, you rob yourself of the very process that would make you strong, wise, and capable. You become the tragic figure instead of the triumphant one. But if you confront it, if you walk into the storm, eyes wide open, you become more than you were. You become someone who has not only survived, but who can guide others. Someone whose pain was not meaningless, but was transformed into purpose. Every hero suffers. And every hero on the other side of that suffering becomes powerful. Not invulnerable, not perfect, but powerful in the sense that they can now carry others. And that is the highest aim. Not simply to rise alone, but to become someone who makes rising possible for others. That is what your pain is offering you, not just survival, but transformation. Delaying gratification is perhaps the most important psychological skill you can cultivate if you aim to become something more than a slave to impulse. It's what separates those who rise from those who spiral. In a world addicted to instant results and immediate pleasure, the ability to suffer now for the sake of something greater later is nothing short of revolutionary. Pain, when chosen, is not just tolerable, it's strategic. It becomes a currency that you're investing into a better future. When you go to the gym instead of scrolling your phone, you're choosing pain now for strength later. When you study instead of partying, you're enduring now for mastery tomorrow. When you speak truth in a hard conversation instead of avoiding conflict, you're facing the burn now to build trust in the future. Every decision to delay comfort is a moment where you say, I believe in the person I'm becoming more than I believe in the pleasure of this moment. That's not just maturity, that's power. Because now you're not reactive, you're deliberate. You're not living by whim, you're living by principle. And that kind of person cannot be manipulated, cannot be enslaved by trends or seduced by shortcuts. They are grounded, centered, dangerous in the best possible way. And this ability to delay gratification isn't some rare trait. It's a muscle. It gets stronger the more you use it. Yes, it's painful. But that's the point. The discomfort of discipline now will always be less than the pain of regret later. So when you feel that urge to quit, to escape, to indulge, remember you're training your future. You're deciding who you'll be tomorrow. Choose the pain that builds you, not the pleasure that breaks you. Meaning makes pain bearable. Without meaning, suffering is just suffering. It's chaos. It's despair. But when pain is tied to a purpose, when you know why you're enduring, it becomes not only bearable, but redemptive. It transforms from agony into fuel. That's why people can endure extraordinary hardship when they believe it matters. A parent will work 3 jobs if it means feeding their children. A soldier will march through hell for the sake of protecting their nation. A dreamer will fail 1,000 times if they know the vision is worth it. It's not the suffering that crushes us, it's the sense that it's meaningless. So the key is to aim at something higher, something worth suffering for. When your life is oriented toward meaning, toward growth, contribution, truth, pain becomes part of the path. It's no longer a punishment. It's a teacher, a companion, a forge. And this is a radically different way to live. Most people ask, how do I avoid pain? But the better question is, what pain is worth it? Because when you choose a path of meaning, the pain still comes. But it comes with direction, with context, with power. You wake up and say, yes, this hurts, but it matters, and that changes everything. Viktor Frankl, who survived the horrors of the Holocaust, said it best, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. Your why, your aim, your purpose is what turns pain from a burden into a blessing, not in the soft, sentimental sense, but in the raw, real sense that says, this suffering is shaping me, guiding me, turning me into someone who can bear more, do more, and mean more." That is what you gain when you choose meaning over comfort, a life where even your pain is not wasted. So now you stand at the threshold. You can return to comfort, to the illusion of safety, to the hollow promises of an easy life that costs you nothing. Accept everything you could have been. Or you can step forward into the pain, into the struggle, into the arena where power is forged, where character is built, where purpose is born. Because here's the brutal and beautiful truth: life will break you. One way or another. The only choice you have is this: will it break you down or break you open? The pain you're feeling today is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of your becoming. It is the hammer striking the steel of your soul, shaping something that cannot be bought, faked or inherited, earned strength, real power, the kind that stands when others fall, the kind that speaks when silence is safer, the kind that carries weight not because it's easy, but because it's right. So carry it. Suffer on purpose. Sacrifice now. Not because you hate yourself, but because you believe in who you can become. Make the hard choice today so that tomorrow, when life throws its worst at you, you don't flinch, you lead, you rise, you endure. Not because you're invincible, but because you've been there before. And you chose to come back stronger. Let them have their comfort. You chase fire, because pain today, when chosen with courage, when faced with honesty, when endured with purpose, becomes your power tomorrow. And that is how you become dangerous in the best possible way.